Hi everyone, I'm Dr. Steph and I'm one of the lecturers for the Financial Literacy curriculum at U of T Med. Throughout this year, I've been giving lectures about personal finance not only at my own institution, but also at other medical schools across Ontario, Quebec, and the Maritimes. And throughout all of these lectures, I've gotten frequently asked questions by students that appear at every single lecture I give. Probably the most frequently asked question is, will this lecture be recorded? But the second most commonly asked question is, should I invest or pay debt? Should I invest my line of credit? Which I hope to address in today's video. And so the purpose of this video is that it's going to be the first in a series of very short videos addressing all of the commonly asked questions that students ask me at every lecture I give. So let's begin. So let's say you just graduated. On average, a medical student in Canada will graduate with about $100,000 in student debt. And if they're in first year residency, or if generally on average in residency, your salary will be about $60K. So let's say after rent, food, and other expenses, you have about $1,000 left over that you can choose to invest or you can choose to pay debt. So first of all, if you have any form of credit card debt, you want to always pay that off first. The reason being is that credit card interest rates range from about 19% to 30%, and it can be really hard to find any investment that can top that. Not only that, your credit card interest can compound daily, which makes it grow really quickly. And this is probably the fastest way if you want to get deeper into debt. On the other hand, let's say if you have government student loans that's not accruing interest right now. So for example, you might still be a current student, or you might be in your grace period before the government asks you to start paying interest on those student loans. So in that kind of situation, you shouldn't necessarily need to pay these off immediately because they're not costing you anything per month. But in a lot of students' situations, they might have some sort of line of credit where their interest is prime minus 0.25%, which is at 2.2% right now, but it could change depending on how prime rate might fluctuate. Or they might have government student loans, which are at prime rate right now, which is minus 2.45%. And so a lot of these students are thinking, well, debt is cheap right now, and it's not costing me that much, so why don't I consider investing in the stock market? And when you look at the stock market, on average, it grows about 7.5%. And so you're looking at a gain of about approximately 5%. How I got that number is, 7.5% gains from the stock market minus how much you're losing every month or losing through your student loans minus 2.45%. And that's how you get the gain. So a lot of students are thinking, okay, why don't I just not pay my debt and invest in the stock market? Now, this is like a very blanket solution. It's not necessarily one size fit all, because that 7.5% gain is an overall average across 1921 to 2019. And so it might not necessarily fit your personal situation. And so the whole purpose of today's presentation is to help you be informed of both sides, paying debt versus investing, so that you can make an informed decision that fits your personal situation. So let's look at investing first. Why would you want to invest? Well, like I said in my previous slide, that gain comes from an average from 1921 to 2019. So if you plan to invest for a long period of time, let's say over 10 years, if this is investment for your retirement and you plan to buy and hold that investment for a long time, investing, then you'll be able to take advantage of that 7.5% gain or even higher. If you have some space in your tax sheltered account, so for example, your tax-free savings account or TFSA, the fact that your capital gains won't accrue tax on it will allow you to keep more of those gains from your investments. And so it might be a good idea to start taking advantage of those accounts. And also, if you do know about how to invest, or you have investments in mind that are stable, that have good returns, and you don't plan on day trading, investing might be something that you might want to consider because you have educated yourself about it. Now, why would you want to pay your debt? So Paying debt allows you to build credit. For those of you who may have heard about something called a credit score, it is a score that ranges from about 300 to 900 in Canada and 300 to 850 in the States. And this is a score that if you're getting high, like for example, 850 or 900, it shows that you're a reliable person and that you can be relied on in paying back debt. And this credit score, or building a good credit, is important when it comes to getting loans or when it comes to finding rent. So for instance, if a landlord wants to decide whether they want you to rent their place, they want to know how reliable you are at paying back debt. And so if you have a high credit score from a history of having paid back debt, then you're more likely to get these favorable rates on things like mortgages, loans, or you'll be shown to be more reliable to landlords, for instance. The other thing about paying debt is that it allows you to invest in the known. So what this means is that over time, let's say if you started investing as a medical student when you started medical school in 2017, and let's say you graduated at the time of the pandemic where things dropped in April. In that kind of situation, you would have either not made any money at all or you would have lost money. And back in 2017, when you first started investing, you wouldn't have predicted or known that the pandemic was going to happen. And so, at least with paying debt, you know that you're going to be losing approximately $183 per month due to paying interest. And that amount gets less and less as you pay down more and more of the principal, which is the $100K of that debt. Or some of you might be wanting to save up for a house, or you have any sort of large purchase. So in that sort of situation, you don't want to be investing in something very volatile, which the stock market can be in these times. If this is money that you need in the near term, like for example, within the next 5 years, because you want to buy a house. Or for some of you who want to draw upon your line of credit and you want to have space for that line of credit if you need it for your housing investments or things like that, you want to make sure that you want to pay that debt down so you still have space in your line of credit to draw upon for these big purchases. And finally, some people might find that it's just psychologically relieving to not be tied down to any sort of financial institution, to not be owing debt to anybody. And that's kind of the essence of financial freedom. And so for some people, they find that that really relieves a weight off their shoulders. And so the second variation of this question that a lot of students ask is, can I invest my line of credit? And so this is a concept known as leveraged investing. And probably the most common form of leveraged investing is mortgages. It's basically when you use debt to accrue investments or to obtain investments. So in a mortgage, for example, you're using debt, which is the mortgage, to obtain a house, which is considered an investment. The only issue with leveraged investing in the case of line of credit is, unlike mortgages, mortgages are quite stable in that the bank can't say, oh, I want this money back, you have to pay it back all at once. Whereas in line of credit, they are a form of a callable loan. So a callable loan is basically when the bank wants to call the loan back all at once, they can at any time. Whereas a bank can't ask you to pay all of the mortgage back all at once. So for example, in this particular article, a student at the University of Saskatchewan had to drop out of med school due to mental illness. And so in that situation, their bank had wanted to call the entire loan back, saying that, look, you're no longer a student, and usually in order for you to keep that line of credit, you have to have some sort of proof of enrollment to prove that you're still a medical student. And since they were no longer a student, they had dropped out for either mental health reasons, for whatever reasons, failures, things like that. Now that bank wants them to pay all that amount back, and that can be quite overwhelming. The other thing is, it also kind of depends on your stress tolerance. Some people are not really comfortable with using debt to invest or using leverage investments. So for instance, if you're having this line of credit debt, and then later on you decide to get a house, and now you have this mortgage debt, then you also have your student loan from the government that you have to pay back. And who knows what other forms of debt you might end up accruing in the future. That can be a lot of weight on your shoulders. And as I mentioned before with the psychological relief, sometimes not having any debt, finding that financial freedom, it can be really stress relieving. And look, if you're still undecided at the end of this video, you can always take that $1,000 extra you have every month, put $500 towards the loan interest and the principal of your line of credit or whatever debt you have. Or you can put the other $500 towards your investments so that you can kind of start taking advantage of learning how to invest with a small amount and also taking advantage of your tax-free savings account. So if you have any other questions, feel free to leave it in the comments below and connect with me through my blog at @BreakingBadDebt on Instagram. And feel free to check out any of my other videos. Subscribe and turn on notifications for any other new lecture recordings that I might upload.